2, 1. Okay, we are live. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Monique Johnson, and I'm so excited to have the wonderful Brian Fanzo, and we're going to talk about how to be yourself, the use of storytelling and strategy with live video. Now, a brief kind of introduction about Brian. Brian is a keynote speaker and founder and CEO of iSocialFans with a Z, LLC, a social strategy consulting agency. Brian has also hosts the SMA C Talk podcast and FOMO Fans with a Z podcast. And Brian's hashtag Think Like a Fan philosophy has powered first of their kind storytelling companies for many Fortune 50 enterprise companies, leveraging Periscope, Snapchat, and Facebook Live under the username at iSocialFans with a Z. He was also awarded the top 25 social business leaders of 2014 by the Economist Intelligence Unit and was nominated for the first ever hashtag Shorty Awards Periscoper of the Year for 2016, which I didn't know that, so congratulations on that. And in 2016, Brian keynoted in 10 countries at more than 40 events, highlighting his passion for change, collaboration, and community, in which all of that will be dubbed in his new book coming up in the spring of 2017. So welcome, Brian.
Thanks for having me. I have to first say, apologize for the delay and jumping on the.
Oh, no problem. I know you're a busy man. So even though I've just like vomited a lot about you, I would love to just kick off by asking like the story of Brian. Like, how did you get started online and then also with live video?
Sure. So, for me, it's kind of, I worked in cybersecurity, data center and cybersecurity technology for the first 12 years of my career. But I like to say that, YouTube was really my first jump into social media because I didn't know anything about cyber or the data center. I used YouTube to kind of teach me. I like to say, although I went to college, I went to YouTube University, and YouTube was the big thing to kind of help me grow my brand, help me understand different technologies. And so that was a big part of it. And then in the fall of 2013, the start of 2014, I decided as I was pivoting, I was going to go all in on social media. I was going to start telling my story everywhere and anywhere I could and really do as much as I can at really sharing how I do things, why I do things. And that's kind of allowed me to grow. I left the data center company that I was at as a startup. I left there in the summertime of 2014, and I've now been an entrepreneur ever since. I run my own company. And then the spring of 2015, I happened to be in Barcelona when Meerkat came out, and I had a friend tell me, hey, you should try this out. I was a big fan. I talk a lot. I talk fast. But I wasn't a big video person, but I loved like kind of the interactive element of video. And I hosted a Twitter chat at the time that was all on Google Hangouts, where we interviewed different thought leaders in the social business space. And so Meerkat and live video kind of fell in my lap. And 2 years later, it'll be 2 years next month that I would have fell into the live video category, and I believe it'll be close to 1,900 live streams that I've done in the 2 years. So I've done lots of live video, and I enjoy it. I love it because I think it's as close to human interaction, face to face, being ourselves as we can in all of the digital space. There's nothing more human than even on this show, and I showed up a little bit late. We had to reschedule things, but that's part of the joy of live video, is that we kind of just have to adapt and roll as things go forward.
Thank you. Wow, 1,900 live streams in the past 2 years. That's amazing, and I know it's only going to just quadruple by the end of 2017. And I like to say that about the difference, because people ask me to, like, Monique, which do you prefer, or what is the difference between pre-recorded video on YouTube versus live streaming? I feel like with pre-recorded video, you'll put all the effort into making this video, editing it, and then you kind of have this waiting game. Unlike with live streaming video, it's instant engagement. You can instantly find out whether people like something or not. And like you said, the whole idea of human connection is very, very key factor when it comes with live streaming video. So I think that's awesome. Now, one of the main reasons why I had Brian come on today is the fact that he launched a new course called Be Yourself. And before we even get into that, Brian, I just want to know, why did you decide to title your course Be Yourself? What is the whole idea of hashtag Be Yourself and what it means to you and what you want to portray to those who become your students or who are interested in even looking at your course?
So for me, I've had an amazing success since really the fall of 2013 in my growth as far as digital, my growth as what I've been kind of working on. And when people ask me like, hey, Brian, what's your secret to success? What has been the thing that's allowed you to stand out? My answer has always been like, well, I'm the same person as I am offline as I am online. The number one compliment that I can get when someone, sees me on stage and I get off stage is, it's my favorite compliment. Someone says, hey, Brian, you are the exact same person as you are online as you are on stage. And that to me is, it gives me goosebumps because that has been my secret to success. So when I was building out a course, and really I had built out courses in my previous life for cyber and in that space, but I really hadn't had a course, but people kept asking like, Brian, we want to know like how you do things, your thoughts on storytelling, like how do you be on all these platforms? How do you manage your time? Where do you do all these? And I decided, you know what? I can't scale that. I can't have a Skype call with every person. It's really hard. So I decided I'm going to create a course and I'm going to focus it on my ability to be myself. So I talk about how I integrate that into Twitter, how I integrate that into launching a blog, where live video fits in there. But I also go through the journey of when I started. In 2014, as I was growing my brand, I didn't have a website. I didn't have a blog. I hated writing. I'm still not a huge fan of writing. And so for me, it's a lot of this idea of like, I think so many people are afraid to get started, but they're also not really sure how to be themselves online because for the last 9 years, you didn't really have to be yourself. And I think live video is the reason I love live video is because it separates the noise and those that can be themselves online and offline. I always say, if you suck offline, you're going to suck on live stream, right? And it sounds a little harsh by saying that, but the truth is live video exposes the truth of who you are. And if you can say, I don't know, and if you can admit to, hey, this is how it was going on and kind of be very transparent, you can be very successful on live video. And I believe you can be very successful in digital as a whole if you take that same approach. And even launching something like an I don't know page, where it's a page where I'm going to launch where it's going to say everything I don't know, which is kind of counter intuitive. But if people know that I'm okay admitting what I don't know, then when I'm talking about what I do know, they're now going to believe me because they're like, well, he apparently realizes that he doesn't know this stuff. Now he's going to go all in here. And so that's kind of where the Be Yourself came from. It's been a lot of fun. I actually I recorded 2 more added modules to that course, and so far so good. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, it's beyourself.live is the URL. You guys can check it out. Those are free trial modules that are up there for people to kind of get a sample of the type of training. It's very video interactive, but I also have audio clips. So if you want to listen to it kind of podcast style, you can download the audio versions of the course as well. So trying to allow people to kind of learn at their own pace.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. I'm glad you said that. And yeah, I find it very interesting when you see someone, especially someone that you follow, a thought leader online, and then you meet them and they're 2 completely different people. So I really like the fact that you're focusing and you're telling everyone, okay, be yourself, no matter whether it's online, offline, because yeah, I feel like that's the best way to have people become even more of a loyal audience. And to me, there's nothing more of a better connection is, okay, I love Brian Fanzo, and then when I see him in person, oh my goodness, he's the same. Like, you feel like you know that person already, and then you have that one-on-one personal connection. It just elevates it even more. So what I really like about your course, and for those of you who check it out, he dedicates a whole module to storytelling. And when it comes, because I've been in the video space, and whenever I talk to clients or just people in general, I always like to tell them to start from a storytelling perspective. And I really, really love and like that you have decided to pretty much create like the foundation of the core of the course to start from there. And so I wanted to get your thoughts as far as what is the value of storytelling, and then how can you apply that specifically when it comes to live streaming video?
Sure. No, and I mean, without question, I think storytelling is my favorite thing to study because it'll never be perfect. And the neat thing about telling a story is that every time you tell it, your audience changes, who you are changes, where you are changes, life changes around you. Therefore, the story will never be complete, but you understanding the value of telling your story. And it's amazing for me when people are looking at a storytelling, oftentimes they have an idea of what their story is, but they aren't sure how to tell it, or even, is that really your story, right? Like, and one of my favorite examples is, if you go to a fast food restaurant with one of your friends, and every time they go to a fast food restaurant, they get their order messed up every time. Is it the people taking the order that are always wrong, or is it the story that the person is actually telling when they're actually ordering it, not being very good at conveying what's the most important aspect of their order, and waiting till the person's actually looking them in the eyes. And so I look at storytelling as this ability for you to relate with your audience, convey your message, and then ultimately allow the audience to also kind of give you feedback, because your story is always going to kind of change as you go. And so in live video, I think one of my favorite things to talk about, I do this on stage a lot, is what you do is really boring. Nobody cares what you do. Like, literally, I don't care what you do. What you do is boring. We all do this whole same space, but why you do what you do, how it's going to impact the audience, and why people come back and follow you is what matters. So rather, when someone talks about their story, they say, hey, Brian, I'm a plumber. I'm like, that's not your story. That's what you do. Your story is that, hey, I started my own plumbing business because I realized that they had really bad customer service, and I wanted to go above and beyond. And all of a sudden, when people start telling the story, not the what they do, it's transforming. It really does. And so even on live video, I always tell people, welcome people onto the stream, and then introduce yourself, and introduce yourself in a way that allows it to be complementary to what you're going to be talking about. Because although it seems like, hey, it's the same people watching me over and over again, someone could watch a replay, someone could come in, and you want them to know who you are, and you also want to kind of set the stage. And so, yes, Jenny, I saw that. So Jenny said, it's your what is boring, and if you can own that and realize that, then your story isn't about the what. And that's and I have a whole module dedicated to, I have a checklist where you can download this checklist, and it says the 4 characteristics of your life that have impacted you the most, the 4 people that, you've looked up to the most. And as you go through this checklist, it allows you to start re-examining your story, or even creating your story. And I can tell you, by creating that storytelling module, I actually recreated part of my story, and even what I'm going to be rolling out. And it was very good. It was self-aware, and I realized wow, I haven't done a good job of talking about these 2 things. And I think that's the cool part about storytelling, is that, I study Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs, President Obama. I love studying. For me, all these people are great storytellers because they're able to relate with their audience and convey their achieved a message. And if you can look at that and then put it into your why and your how, storytelling can be definitely a game changer.
Yes, I love everything that you said, and it pretty much ties into, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, with his infamous TED Talk.
One of my favorite books. Yes, my favorite books. I've seen him speak twice. He's an amazing presenter as well. I study him very well. Simon Sinek is great, and even Leaders Eat Last is his most recent book, and it's really good as well.
Okay, yeah. So his TED Talk has millions of views. So that's when I first discovered him. I'm actually literally reading his book now, Start With Why. So all that you're saying, I'm just yes, boom, that ties right into it. And as he stated in his book, and I feel even with you, the fact that you even had to re-go through your story, I feel that's, even though that's the most important starting point, it's the hardest for people to really figure out what is their why and how can they share that with people instead of concentrating so much on your what. So like I said, I'm really glad, I was so thankful that you started and dedicated a whole module in your course in regards to storytelling, because it's very, very important. We've been told stories since we were infants, and that's the only way I feel you can truly connect with someone outside, of course, live streaming and all that other stuff. But when people know what your why is and what your story is, it just elevates everything to a whole nother level. So
especially if you look at all of these things that we're talking about, social media, video, it's all a delivery mechanism for your story. I mean, and if you want people to remember you, they remember why and how it made them feel. They don't remember what you do. I mean, it's even for me, like, my first name being Brian, I always tell people, like, if I had to go back, I would have probably had my Twitter handle as Brian Fanzo, only just because it makes it a little bit more complicated having iSocial fans as kind of my brand. But for a lot of people that are out there, they're like, Brian, I remember you because of the story that became iSocial fans and like what that takeaway was and how it made me feel. And yes, I mean, that book, I'm so glad you're reading that because it's actually a book. I was not a huge reader until at 31, I got diagnosed ADHD, and I've read more books in the last 4 years than I have my first 31 years of my life because of that. And I actually went back and I reread Simon Sinek's Why 3 times, and it's the only book I've read more than once, and I've read it 3 times. And it's that much to me because it is that foundation of the storytelling. And in my course, there was 2 modules I wanted to make sure, or 2 things I wanted to hit home: storytelling and community. And I gave storytelling its own module, and I gave community a section inside of every module. And it's really because telling your story, I believe, is something you have to craft. And then I believe community has to be the foundation across the board.
Boom. Yes, I was about to say that too, because, he talks about that as far as a true leader truly inspires, and then they think about their community and things like that. So the next question that I have for you is, now that we talked about storytelling, what are some ways for people to share their story on social media? And since this is about live streaming video, it'd be great if you could share some things about that as well.
Sure. So, I talk a little bit about, before you start sharing your story, your story doesn't have to be perfect. And for the people that are out there, there's 2 things that I preach when it comes to live video. And if you don't understand these 2 things, you'll never embrace live video. And the first one is perfection is a fairy tale. If you look at it, tell me one brand that's perfect. Tell me one person that's perfect. I mean, Mother Teresa was not perfect. Therefore, if Mother Teresa was not perfect, why are we holding ourselves to this perfection, fairy tale? And the second one is control. You cannot control your message. You cannot control your live feed. You cannot control what people say about you. And so if you can embrace the fact that, okay, if I don't have to be perfect, I don't need to control the message, but I need to tell my story, because if you're not telling your story, why would anyone else understand your story? And so when I look at it, I start telling people, focus on highlighting people around you, celebrating people that, one of my first blog posts that I ever wrote was actually a book. I read a book called Human to Human from Brian Kramer. And I read that book and I was like, man, I need to create a blog post. And people kept asking me things. And I was like, all I would do is talk about this book. And I was like, you know what? My first blog post is going to be about this book. And I literally, it was a book review. And it's amazing. Like that was 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess. I still have people talk to me about that book review because they're like, Brian, we learned so much about you on how you highlighted Brian Kramer, who ends up being a really good friend of mine now. And we're actually be spending a couple of weeks together in South by Southwest. And so when I'm helping people look at live video, think of it this way. We always say, okay, I have to get on live video, and we only think about the front camera, right? We're always worried about, all right, I have to go live. Well, the reason live video uses both cameras is because you can actually flip the camera around and highlight somebody else, or do what you're doing right now, right? Interviewing somebody, because by interviewing someone, especially someone that shares your passion and your purpose and has a similar mantra than you, by interviewing them and highlighting them, you also kind of hook your story to what they believe. And I think that's a great way of kind of starting to get your story out there. And then the last part about the storytelling in live video, I think you have to test things out. You will not know how much is too much. What should I talk about? What shouldn't I talk about? All of these things that people worry about, you will not know until you do it. And so that's why I always tell people, they always say, what's the best advice you can give for people for live video? It's simply, press the damn button. Press the button and go live, right? Like, I mean, you're never going to know. And if you're not worried about being perfect, pressing the button is not scary because you're like, screw it, I'm going to press the button. But at the same time, I mean, even now, 1,900 live streams later, I will still, some of the streams that I will get on, I'll start overthinking and I'll put all these hashtags in the title and I'll start getting all these things I'm worried about. And that's okay because I think that's part of the process. But until you start putting it out there, you will never know how your story comes across or how you can adapt your story until you start getting feedback. And I think that's
Great. Sorry, it kind of comes out.
It froze there for a second.
Yeah. Sorry about but that I love that answer, and I love the fact that you said perfection is a fairy tale, and that's why people love live streaming video. It's not about being perfect and having the editing and all that other stuff. Like it's about being raw. That's what I tell people about live streaming. That's what they want. I mean, even back in the day when they used to have. Well, I wasn't alive then, but 50s and 60s, they would record video, the TV show, they'll have a live crowd, and there's nothing more than being live in that crowd versus watching something that's, being recorded and all the bells and whistles appearing on a TV. So nothing can compare to the live experience.
And there's nothing, it's a great reminder too, because we all know that everybody that we look up to puts their pants on or their skirt on the exact same way we do, right? But we kind of forget that sometimes. I think live video is amazing because I talk about it all the time. Richard Branson's getting off an airplane, and it was like the first week Periscope was out, and he was on Periscope, and all of a sudden he looks down and he goes, crap, I forgot my wallet. And I remember thinking, holy cow, he forgets his wallet like I do. Like, it was like one of those things where it's like, I'm not Richard Branson, but he is human. He is no different than any of us. We all have 24 hours in the day. We all get dressed the same way. And I think live video is actually transforming the entire digital age because those that have been faking it to make it for the last 9 or 10 years of social media are getting exposed. And they're going to get exposed because guess what? Like when live video will amplify good, but it'll also highlight that you suck and highlight that you're bad, right? And I think for the people that are faking it, this is a scary platform. And this is really it can worry a lot of people, right? But overall, if you look at this, it's kind of eliminating the barrier and it's allowing great people to highlight what makes them great. And I mean, that's the kind of world that I want to live in, is that, we're able to leverage digital and it highlights the great aspects of who we are.
Yes. And so while we've been talking, thank you everyone who has joined us. Sorry I haven't acknowledged you guys, but everyone from Ross Brand, Tristan, Jason, Jenny, David, Alfredo, Anthony. But Jenny had a really good question that I would love for you to address, Brian. And if I can find it, it's right. Sorry, there's so much going on. She said something along the lines of, from what I can remember, she asked, oh, here it is. I'm going to have it appear. Okay. It says, should we choose one social media platform and master it, or should we devote time to several for maximum exposure?
One of my favorite questions. I thank you for asking this question, because I tell you what, I believe there's this sense of, when you start out, you have to start out where you individually are most comfortable. It has to be your home base, because if you start out where you think your audience is or what's the most popular, you're going to start putting excuses and all of these barriers into actually doing it, right? You're going to you're going to like, I'm going to do live video because everybody's telling me it, but I'm not really good on video. And you're going to say the lighting's not right, or I don't have audio equipment, or I need all this. And you're going to start making excuses. So I always tell people, start out where you're most comfortable, but then always listen and understand all of the other platforms so that you know where your audience is going to be. Because I don't believe in an adage of only being on one over a long period of time, but to start out what you own and then start expanding. And the key is trying to be where your audience is, right? Because the element here of I'm kind of I hate to say this because I'm the one that is on every platform, right? And there isn't a platform that I'm not on, but that's my job, because when I go back to my clients, when I go on stage, I tell people, here's the value of Twitter, here's the value of Instagram, here's the value of Tumblr, here's the value of the 7 live streaming platforms. Excuse me, but I always say, pick what fits best for you and where you believe your audience is. And it's not about being everywhere and being great. It's about being where you love to be and then also going to where your audience is. And so if they're not on Snapchat, don't go on Snapchat. But that doesn't mean you don't want to listen and learn to what the value of Snapchat is, because there's a good chance that your audience might move to Snapchat in the future. And so I think rather than looking at it and looking at great exposure, and another word, exposure, is always a funny one for me. I love social media because every post on Twitter, and I have a large Twitter audience, every post on Twitter, when I post it, I always think of it as a one-to-one conversation in public. Therefore, I only need to impact one person. It doesn't need to get 400 retweets. I like 400 retweets, but for me, if it impacts one person, that's the job. Because if you think about it in your real life, if I could impact and make one person's day better every day, sign me up today. Like, I would do that in a heartbeat. And I think when we sometimes get overwhelmed by like, hey, I want maximum people to know about me. But if you don't start and have a home base that's most comfortable for you, people are never going to know who you are or where to find you.
Boom. Yes. And then I think because of that, and in which I was going to ask this later, and Jenny kind of beat me to it with the whole idea of, in which you have addressed, is the whole idea of FOMO, right? The fear of, missing out. And as a result, to me, that leads to people becoming paralyzed, not wanting to just press that damn button, like you said, right? So
I launched my podcast, my solo podcast is called FOMO Fans, which is the fear of missing out thing. And the reason I did that was I was trying to help everybody have a mindset to embrace their FOMO. And I realized that's not for everybody, right? And you're right, it does paralyze us. But actually, this is a question I got on the podcast I was just on with Jason, who I think is watching now. He asked me a question, was like, what's the hardest part about being in the social media industry as a leader? And I think it's because it's the idea that we always are trying to keep up with everybody else. And it's because we live on, like, we can't turn off Facebook. We can't turn off, like, we live in this space. This is our job. And I think the thing that I always tell everybody, and it's something that I had to remind myself about multiple times, I don't need to do what everyone else is doing because their version of success and their individual goals are not the same as mine. And if you can remember that, when you see someone someone go from a 1 day a week podcast to 5 days a week, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to do 5 days a week. Well, then I go, wait a second. Doing 5 days a week does not get me towards my goals, does not help me achieve success. Then all of a sudden, you can take a step back and realize I don't need to do what everyone else is doing. I don't need to keep up with the Gary V's. I don't need to keep up with the Tony Robbins. I don't need to do all of these things that everyone else is doing. I can focus on me, and I can let other people be who they are. And it's the FOMO aspect is funny because FOMO for me has been like my favorite aspect of what I do. I love kicking the tires on new stuff. I love trying out everything that's out there. But at the same time, when someone asks me, like, what's your favorite place to consume content? It's podcasts. And that's not new. Podcasts have been around for 8 years, but I listen to 12 podcasts a week, every week, and that's where I consume a lot of my information. So I think you have to find out what's best for yourself, own that, but at the same time, realize that there's lots of things out there and not be paralyzed by the FOMO that exists.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, how does one gain trust online and with live video content? Now, I feel like in general, before you answer, video helps take you to the next level for someone to trust you more quickly. And then I think live streaming video even amplifies it even more. And so how does one gain trust online? Like you said, with this live streaming thing, it's scary for a lot of people, for all the fakers out there who's been faking it till they make it for the past 9 to 10 years. So what if it's someone who's just starting out, right? And this is something they generally want to do and take ownership of and really help those that are out there, because I'm all about helping those who really truly want to help others. So how does one gain trust online and with live video content?
So I believe transparency is the key. And I think transparency does not guarantee trust. And I always say this, transparency gives you an authentic window into allowing people to build trust. And so being transparent doesn't mean you share everything you eat and you talk about, what you're doing in the bathroom. Like, that's not transparency. That's oversharing. We do not need any more of that in our world. But I look at transparency and say, when someone asks you a question, and I get these questions all the time. Well, I got this question actually yesterday on a podcast, and someone said, Brian, how do you focus on creating content that serves other people while also creating content that builds your business? And the easy answer could have been, I could have put out an answer. The answer that I gave was, I do a really bad job of that. because I love creating content that helps everyone else, and I sacrifice my own business success way too often. And I'm trying to reprioritize that now. But for me, that's transparency, not in the sense that was like making people want to do more business with me, but it was like, hey, this is the truth. Like, I'm still figuring that out. And the fact that someone asked me that question doesn't mean I have to convey the perfect answer to build trust. Trust is actually oftentimes built by sharing your vulnerabilities. And so I think, embracing your vulnerabilities on live video, like I talk a lot about being diagnosed ADHD and the fact that I struggle reading. And these are things that used to be like, faux pas. You would never share that. And but I was like, wait a second, it's who I am. It's part of what makes me me. And I believe that element, live video, is so much fun because if you can say, I don't know, if you can be like, that's a great question, I never thought of that, I need to write it down. Like little things like that allow people to realize like, hey, this is someone that is going to, when they're sharing what they are, I can trust them, right? And I think there's no greater trust vehicle than live video, but it has to be done in a way that you're willing to share not just the good, but kind of the vulnerabilities, and also kind of get that transparent window into saying, I don't know, I have not a clue, good question, right? Like that's where I think of it is. And I love watching people, and it doesn't matter how many followers you have. If you can start thinking of it and saying, I'm going to share everything about. Oh, we had a little hiccup there.
We had a little hiccup. Okay, we're back. Okay.
But you might lose some business with the idea of being yourself and being transparent. But the business you gain is the business you want, right? Because you want to work with people that know who you are, that understand your vulnerabilities. Like for me, I've always struggled managing my email box, right? And I started to be very transparent, saying like, email to me is a nightmare because I have so many different things coming in. It's hard to manage, but I know it's not going away. But when I started to share that, I have my clients now, they're like, what's the best way to get a hold of you? I'm like, well, for you, it's probably, text message. For you, it's probably, Snapchat ends up being a very popular one. And it's amazing that being transparent about something that as a business owner is kind of scary. I might have lost a couple clients that are like, I only do business on email. But I gained clients that are like, hey, he's being open and saying, if you want to get a hold of this guy, do it these other ways. And it's amazing, that feeling, because now my clients are the clients that I want to work with. They're the ones that get who I am. And I think for every business out there, I don't care, small, medium, or large, we all want the right clients. And the only way to do that is to be yourself online and do it transparently.
Yes, all that you said, I love that. And just the fact that this, for those who are watching, looking at the various content that you can create are behind the scenes. Like there's this one guy, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, Brian. His name is Greg McDaniel. He's in the realtor space. And almost every single day he's using the Blue Jeans app. You will see him as he's making phone calls or testing out new scripts as he's testing out for his clients. And then he does his podcast, partnering up with somebody else, and definitely check him out. But anyway, like doing things like that, even, why can't I remember his name? Video Owen. I'm going to call him that. Yeah. Owen Video. Yeah.
Owen Hemsworth.
There you go. He does the same thing when he's setting up his studio and testing out new things. And now he has his own Facebook group, and he's also going live with that as well. So for those of you who are watching, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay if you don't necessarily figure things out. And as Brian has stated, it makes someone want to trust you even more because you have nothing to hide. You're not hiding anything from them. You're not doing the latest, I don't want to say schemes, but, tactics and marketing, like saying these certain words and, thinking, oh, okay, they're just doing this just to generate new business. Yep. And I guess you could say, Brian, based on you doing all this content, now you're not chasing clients, I'm assuming people are approaching you all the time because you're being so transparent and you're producing so much content.
It's a great play. Like for me, I spoke at over 40 events in 10 countries just last year, and I only applied and reached out to one of those 40 events. Every one of those were inbound, and it's an amazing feeling. Even this morning I have a inquiry for Ireland and Dubai in May, and they were someone that heard me on a podcast 2 years ago. The podcast happened to just come up. They were listening to old episodes. They reached out to me and were like, hey, and they're like, on this podcast, you talked about your struggle as a dad. And, and I was like, it was amazing because it's one of those things where you're like, you don't know what's going to resonate, but the idea that if you can be yourself, allowing yourself to resonate in that way is just amazing. And I love that. Someone just paused my podcast smack talk. That's awesome. Thank you, Delia. Yes.
For joining. And for those of you who are here, I haven't done any shout outs lately, but Gareth, Jenny, Chris, Miller, and Chris Strub, thank you so much, guys, for participating in here. Nancy, Jason. So let's continue with this because I love where we're going with this. So, next question. How to successfully get people to find your content. So we talked about all this transparency, getting content out there, but how do we successfully get people to find us and our content? And a train is about to come again. I live by the train, so I apologize if you hear a noise. Okay.
No worries. I live right by a fire station, so like people that listen to my podcast, they know that you'll hear a fire truck go by and an ambulance go by.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, so I think, being discovered starts with being memorable, right? Because the greatest way to be discovered, and it's the reason I love podcasting. Podcasting search sucks. Podcasting, discovery sucks. It's a word of mouth game. People say, "Oh, you're a podcast listener. What's your 5 favorite podcasts?" Then we go listen to those 5 podcasts. That's kind of how the podcast world works. And so you have to be very memorable, but I also kind of believe in going to where your audience is and being part of that community, not just going there and dropping links or jumping in all of these groups but if you go in there and you add value, people will come to you and say, what content are you creating? Or do you have a weekly show? Or do you go live on Facebook? And so for me, when I look at all of these different things and I kind of bring everything back, it also depends on the platform, like, understanding hashtags. Hashtags on Twitter are the greatest way to kind of get your content discovered, but there's also things like Twitter chats that are weekly shows that go on Twitter. And so part of the way of getting your contents discovered is I think you have to go to where your audience is and be part of the conversation. And then you also don't be afraid to collaborate with other people. Like it's a great thing. Like, hey, I want to get noticed by this person. Let me interview them. I'm going to highlight them. They're going to share that with their audience. And all of a sudden, my content is now being shared to that audience. And so that's definitely a place where I go with it. Oh, yeah, and I see Chris Strubb's comment. So, yeah, this is a shout-out to Joe, a guy we both know from Snapchat. And Joe, his wife was fighting cancer. And this was we are all famous to a few people. And I think it's a great reminder that influence is not about the total numbers. We are all influential. So I think that's also a piece of your content. I don't worry about, like, my website does not get heavy traffic, but my website gets the traffic that I know that I want to get, right? Like, I know I want executive decision makers in IT companies, and I know that I want social media entrepreneurs that are wanting to grow their business. So that's another thing about it is, don't worry about great numbers. Worry about getting that audience that are the people that you want to get to your feed.
Yes, and sorry, Doug. He says, "Where's the love?" I saw you, and I forgot to do a shout out. So I apologize for that, Doug Lehman. I'm sorry. So before I even go on to the next question, just kind of came up the top of my head. Now, what I love so much about the platforms of Snapchat and Instagram Stories now, right, is the fact that you can create your own TV show every day if you wanted to, or your own reality TV show. And I know you're on both. And I follow you on both. So what are your thoughts right now on this war right now between Instagram Stories and Snapchat? What are your thoughts on that in regards to, from a influence perspective, content, and possibly business?
So when Instagram Stories came out, I thought it was genius for Instagram or Facebook, because they own Instagram, to steal what works in Snapchat, right? Like, let's face it, like, innovation is not about creating something new. It's about taking what we're already doing and making it better. I mean, Uber did not reinvent getting a car. That's called the cab service. They just made it a lot easier for us. We streamlined it. And that's really what Instagram Stories did. And I thought when Instagram Stories came out, it was great for complementing your Instagram posts and giving people a little bit more context, because so much of Instagram's about one picture and one link. It's like that's really what you get. But I believe Instagram Stories has turned into a powerhouse because of the algorithm and the live aspect. And there's a lot of these things that they've integrated in there. And I got this question yesterday, and it was from a big fan of mine, and I've been helping them as a business get on Snapchat. And they're like, Brian, you're not creating as much content on Snapchat as I used to be. And part of that is because I believe in consuming and engaging. If I'm going to create content, I have to be willing to engage with those that are watching it. And it's what keeps me up at night, weirdly enough, is that if I'm going to snap on Snapchat and I'm going to post on Instagram, if someone replies to me and watches my content, I'm going to reply to them. And so part of my problem with Snapchat is that consuming content on Snapchat is painful. Like I made the mistake of following almost everybody back, because way back when you could only swipe up if they were following you and you were following them. And I loved that feature. Well, quickly Snapchat got rid of that. And now I have a feed full of crazy nonsense, and I'm not able to see a lot of great content. Where Instagram, and I can watch, through their content, the algorithm works really well. So I think for me, Instagram stories is caught up amazingly with like the value. But I also think of it as two different audiences. Like my audience on Snapchat is still a little bit more raw. They still enjoy a little bit more, I would say, true behind the scenes, right? And I like one of the examples differences for me is where today I did an Instagram story. I was like, man, typical entrepreneur day on Instagram stories. I'm like, can't get motivated. You know what? Productivity is at a minimum. I'm going to go do something about it. And then I showed myself eating a burrito at Chipotle, which is like my favorite place to eat a burrito. Well, on Snapchat, on Snapchat, it would be more of like hey, man, this is behind the scenes. And it's like me eating a burrito. I mean, like, oh my goodness, now my stomach is stuffed and I'm going to go take a nap, right? Like, it's almost like that next level of like transparency. And, but if someone's out there looking for brands, look at it this way. Who's your audience? What kind of engagement are you looking for? And then set yourself up. What does success look like on each one of those platforms? For me, success from a numbers perspective is different on Instagram versus Snapchat, because I still get more views on Snapchat than I do on Instagram stories. But my views on Instagram stories, when I go and look at the names, these are decision makers that are going to hire me to be a speaker. Where on Snapchat, there are people that are going to influence other people to hire me as speakers, but they don't have the checkbook. So I have to remember that when I'm creating content, and that's how I shift on it. But I also would say, I believe Snapchat, better than any other platform, they understand their users. Every one of the features they've done it really strategically. So I'm not counting them out. I believe as their IPO kind of goes public over the next 30 to 45 days, we're going to see some new features from Snapchat. And all of a sudden, people are going to go like, oh yeah, here's Snapchat again, pushing the envelope. Because I don't think Snapchat's going anywhere. I just think you have to be a little bit more strategic in understanding the audience on both.
Yeah, I actually really like your answer. And I've been actually testing out Instagram stories more, because I used to be just strictly Snapchat. I was one of those snobs like, Instagram just completely copied Snapchat. I refuse to get on there, but I've been getting on it more often. Actually, right now it's streaming live. This is my first, you can't see it right now in the camera, but anyway, what I really love about Snapchat is there's a lot of potential for offline businesses. Like, for instance, the geo-tagging feature and filters. I think that's amazing, like for conferences to use that, even for as a realtor, right? Using that for when you're doing an open house. I mean, there's so many different creativity that you can do with Snapchat. And also you can do conferences on it. Like you can do a live video conference, a live phone call. There's so many different things on Snapchat. It's just a matter of being creative and utilizing it as a tool. The only fallback I would say with Snapchat, it's harder to gain followers if you're not someone who already has a large following versus Instagram, because everything's all within the feed. People, it's easier for you to get followers. So that's kind of like the pros and cons of it.
Yeah, and I have a saying with that. I always say limitations inspire creativity. So the limitations of Snapchat inspire you to be creative. If you can be creative, I mean, I last year alone, I bought 65 geo filters for myself. So 65 different ones, from events that I spoke at to places where we were doing workshops and things. And for me, the value of those was crazy. I mean, like, even just people screenshotting or people going, wow, Brian, you're investing. I mean, I had one person hire me back to speak at the event because they said they were the first person that they ever saw, that was paid to speak there, that cared about the community, because it wasn't a Snapchat filter that said, Brian Fanzo is the best. It was a Snapchat filter that was about the event, and it was about highlighting the event. But of course, it was tagged with, sponsored by iSocial Fans. And for them, they were like, you cared so much about our people leveraging Snapchat that you gave them another opportunity. We're going to hire you back. And like, for me, that's like ROI of like, something that cost me, I think it cost me $48 for like 2 days. And the ROI was a $10,000 contract that I got. Like, come on now. I truly think of it from like the idea, okay, this is a limitation of Snapchat. How can I be creative? Because if you can be creative, you'll stand out so easily on Snapchat. So I agree with you on that side.
Actually, I will say you were the first person for me to see, because I actually spoke at Social Media Marketing World last year. We didn't get a chance to meet.
We didn't, but you speak there this year, right? You're speaking there this year as well.
No, I'm not speaking there this year. But, yeah, but last year. And I remember seeing your filter, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so genius. This is so smart. So ever since then, I've like literally been an ambassador for using the filters, because I was like, this is genius. So I will say you're the first person I saw.
I love that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. So how can someone strategically use content? I know you cover this in your course, but with live streaming video, how can someone strategically use it?
So I think, when people hear strategically using content, they immediately think call to action, right? And I like to say, nobody likes to be sold to. Nobody likes to be marketed to. We don't like advertisements because they disrupt our experience. So I like to think, okay, how can I create content that inspires, educates, or motivates? And then ultimately the end result of that content is, wow, Brian knew all of these things, or Brian helped me solve this problem. What else can Brian do for me? Right? And so they're actually coming to me. Like I like to put that, I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan, and jab, right hook, right? But I actually like the jab so well that they right hook me. They come back and say, Brian, I want to buy something from you because you've helped me so many times, right? And that requires creating content that is truly there to help other people. Now, I will say I went through a phase where I jabbed, but I had no right hook. There was nothing anybody could buy because you couldn't afford for me to speak because, you don't own an event, so you're not paying me to speak. Then people are like, well, you don't have a book yet. You don't have all these. So I had to create, the course is part of that. My book coming out will be part of that. But I think when you're looking at these things and you're creating content strategically, also think about it and say, when someone finishes watching your show or, subscribing to your channel or reading your blog post, what is that takeaway you want them to feel? And it doesn't have to be a takeaway like, I want to go swipe my credit card. Maybe it's like, I need to subscribe to his newsletter. So rather than saying the title of your Periscope is subscribe to my newsletter, why not create a video that is like going through all of your process, and then at the end be like, and if this is stuff that you guys really want to see every week, I'll give you my email, my link for my email address, because I'll make sure I put it in your email box so you guys don't miss it. All of a sudden people are like, yes, I want that. But as soon as you start off with it and say, this is a video about why you must subscribe to my email box, we all go, yeah, no thanks, click, and you're off, right? And so I like to say inspire, motivate, educate, and then give them a reason to do whatever your call to action is. And I'm a big fan of no call to actions on live video and doing follow-up afterwards, right? So in my Facebook feed, Facebook Live is great for this. I will go back and I will comment on everybody's comments that have done on the live feed. You do it as well. And then I will start to realize and say, I will message somebody on Facebook Messenger and say, hey, you've been watching 4 of my podcasts episodes just in this month. And I know you work for this brand. Any chance you think you could get my sponsor deck in front of somebody? You'll be amazed. Someone's like, wait, you paid attention? You knew that I watched 4 of your shows? Hell yes. Give me and they'll go fight the battle for you, right? And it's a powerful thing when someone is being your champion by all you doing is acknowledging them supporting you, right? It's a very easy game. That's why I always say, show you care before people realize they want you to care about them. And if you're able to do that, you're going to create advocates for life. And that's really where I look at strategic content. And I will say I am strategic with every single thing I do, every interview I do. But being strategic doesn't mean I'm giving call to actions. It means I have a plan for what I want to achieve by doing a certain show. I probably get 20 requests for interviews a week, right? I have, especially right now. Right now is and so for me, when the person's asking, I say, hey, how do I know them? Have they engaged with me before? What value can I bring to them? What value can they bring to me? And all of these are strategic elements on the content that's being created, right? And I think when you're being strategic in that way, then you can be real when you're doing the content, because I've already set up the strategy on why I'm here and why I dedicated that time. And I think for too many people, it's either all or nothing. It's either all call to actions or it's just fluffy content that wastes everybody's time, which I don't think we need any more of it either. So I think both sides of the fence is a little bit rough.
Yeah, I like your angle on that, because I tell people when they ask me about live streaming, I always say have some sort of call to action at the end, but it's not to sell someone, but to say, hey, subscribe to see more of my live streams if you like this content. Yes. Subscribe to my newsletter. I never say necessarily, oh, push me to a sales page. But at the same time, I'm always saying be strategic with it. Be specific about it as well. Like, don't just say, oh, head on over to my website, because you don't even know if your website is converting people properly or whether it's going to gain someone's attention. You only have 48 seconds now these days to gain attention. But I like how you said that, how it's not necessarily about having call to action. And for those of you who are listening, Brian just shared with you guys a nice little workflow to use live streaming video, just so you know, like how he does it, like leaving comments and all that. So if you guys are paying attention, I'm sure you guys can walk away with a great business strategy. Okay, so I was checking out your blog, in which I'm an avid reader, and there's two blog posts kind of recent that you've done that I would love for you to share more about. So the next question is, you had a blog post that says, why most brands suck at live video. And I would love for you to share this, because I have a similar opinion, and I just would love to hear why do you say that most brands suck at live video?
So yeah, and this is definitely one that's probably closest to my heart. It's a podcast episode and blog post. And really for me, I think most of them suck at live video because they're treating it like a check mark. And the reason that most brands sucked at social media for so long is they treated it like a check mark. They gave it to the intern. They never put, investment behind it. And I believe they're not looking at live video in the right frame of mind, because live video isn't just about, it's not going to replace email marketing. It's not going to replace all of these other things. It really highlights things, but it takes work. And I think for so many people, and this is like my caveat, it's like the reason live video is great is because anybody can press the button. The reason there's a lot of bad live videos is because anybody can press the button. It's the same exact reason, because if you want people to watch your show, you have to give them a reason. And it's amazing for me that if you're doing a big campaign, you spend 3 months about launching the campaign to do, whatever, to launch a new podcast, and you spend all these months. For live video, we spend maybe 1 hour beforehand, and we post something on Instagram, and then all of a sudden, and you did a great job over this show, right? You dropped the links, you provided information about it. I kind of messed it up because I showed up late. But the elements there of like, hey, I'm educating people on what's going on. Most brands are not doing that. And then what happens is they go live and they say, this is my favorite message is, Brian, I have 200,000 likes on my Facebook page. I only had 120 people watch my Facebook Live. Live streaming sucks. And I'm like, this is interesting. So can you tell me how many people engage on your average Facebook post? And they'll say, well, we get like 4 comments and like 8 likes. And I'm like, oh, okay. And how many people continue to come back to your content? Fairly amount of people. So why did you expect by pressing a live button that all 400,000 likes would all of a sudden come when you've only built up an engaged audience of 8 to 12 to 14 to begin with? And I think that's why when I look at brands, I think they throw their hands up because they treat it as a check mark, and then they just like, okay, good, it failed, now we don't have to worry about it anymore. Or they don't invest the same amount of time and effort as they do every other marketing campaign. Because if you really want to invest in it and make it work, spend the money, spend the time, understand the platforms. I mean, it's sad. Facebook went live for the first time with 360, and they teamed up with the National Geographic, right? And this was perfect. They were in Nevada. They were at a Mars setup, or it looked like Mars, and it was going to do 360. And they stood around with the camera and did an interview of 4 people. I mean, the worst content you could have ever done for 360 video. And this is Facebook and National Geographic. I mean, Facebook being Facebook, National Geographic, who has more content and amazing things than any of us could ever imagine. But because they didn't understand the user experience. They didn't understand what makes good 360 video. It was crap. It was so hard to watch because they looked like bubbles and you couldn't even see the people's faces. And so I think just because you have the technology, just because it's there, just because you have great content, it's not as easy as pressing the button. Although we know that the power of it is pressing the button, brands have to take a strategic look at it, and there is a long game, right? You have to be consistent. Like, I mean, on my show, every Monday at 4 p.m., I record my podcast live every single Monday on my Facebook page. And the reason I did that was like, you know what? I don't want people to have to turn on all their notifications because I'm everywhere. I know I post a lot. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get people, and people will message me and they'll say, Brian, you're on my calendar. And I'm like, good, because they don't even have to follow me on social media anymore. They just know Monday at 4, they turn on my Facebook page. They know that they're going to get my content. And so that's the reason, that's the juxt of that entire blog post, is that brands aren't putting enough effort to it, or when they put effort to it, they aren't willing to understand the true user experience.
Yes, and a few things I want to tackle with that. So for one, for example, the brand that you provide an example as far as, I only got 120 views. That brand needs to listen to Gary Vee, because Gary Vee said, even if you have 4 people, you need to be grateful for those 4 people and to serve them and to help them and cater and build this community. So for them to say, I only got 120 views, they should be thankful for that and figure out ways how to engage those 120 viewers. And like you said, how to get them to come back. And then it also ties into this whole, which I have a major problem with, is this instant gratification that we have with media and marketing and all these things. It's like, press that whole push a button and boom, pizzazz, magic, all these great things happen. And the fact that you mentioned the whole long game, yes, with anything and everything, I'm sure that company, when they do other marketing campaigns or any part of their business, they know that it's not going to happen overnight, that it has to be a consistent effort. But the thing is, people don't take social media seriously, or they don't take this huge live video or even just regular video phenomenon seriously, in which they're going to be sadly left behind, just like the days of, when businesses used to think, should I have a Facebook fan page? Should I create that? Like, people are getting left behind and they're going to regret it. And it's just a matter of being creative and testing things out. Like, give yourself even a timeline, but give it your all. Say you're going to do live streaming video for the next 30 to 90 days, but be consistent and show up. And once you do that, yes, you'll start to see results. And if it's not working, then fine. You can actually say, well, we tested this out. Either we tweak it or we move it on to something else. Yeah,
and you're like this. So I tell everybody, so the first 50 live streams that you do, I tell people to put a sticky note over the bottom where it says how many viewers are there, right? Because you should not change your approach or your passion or why you're doing it. And I think for so many people, that number goes up, the number goes down, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, what did I say wrong that the number went down? And so I tell people, put a sticky note across the bottom that covers the total number of live viewers and just do your thing. And eventually you can take that off and you can adjust your content. You can understand how things go. But yeah, for too many people, the word instant gratification is definitely a sad side effect of this real-time world we're living in. Because I always tell people, real-time is easy. Creating content at the right time is the hard part, but that's the game changer.
Yeah, and then I also like to tell people, because some people feel that they can just show up, to plan out your live streams, especially when you're just starting out. So even like you said, sticky note on the bottom, I tell people to put a sticky note right below like the lens and just have a brief outline. Don't even write out the script, because people don't want to, this is live, it's raw, but have an outline that can, bullet points that you can go through, but don't just go live for the sake of going live, because yes, you're not going to get the results that you want. So, we're nearing towards the end. And for those who are watching live, please ask any questions that you have. The floor is open to you guys. Thank you so much for those of you who are watching this live and those who are watching this on the replay. Once again, if you guys have not been here since the very beginning, Brian actually has a brand new course. You can find it at, Brian, I'll let you give your little spiel right here.
Yeah. So it's beyourself.live. So just go to beyourself.live in your browser. There are free trial modules that are up there right now. It's actually 5 of the lessons that are built out there. There's a little over 4.5 hours worth of video content in the course, but not one video is longer than 12 minutes. And so the whole goal of that is it allows you to kind of, be a busy entrepreneur, be a busy person, consume and kind of move yourself and consume the content as you kind of want to do it. And I cover everything from storytelling to managing your digital footprint to how to leverage social media channels. And then the last module is about monetizing it and truly kind of making those call to actions, building out relationships that convert. And I kind of walk you through that whole process over a little over 4.5 hours worth of content. But it's a lot of fun. I've been excited. I've got lots of people that are going through it now that are giving amazing feedback that is inspiring me to add. I created 2 modules this morning that I added into it just because I was excited about the feedback that I'm getting. So lots of fun with it. Yeah, but I'd love for people to check it out.
Yeah, and just to share with you guys kind of like Brian's strategy with helping getting this course out. So behind him, the wall is clear, but before it was full of these large sticky papers that you can put on the wall.
So I actually have them on this wall now.
Oh, okay.
So my process there is, you were right. I whiteboarded here, and then on this wall, once I had them in the modules, I took like the 5 whiteboards that were about storytelling, and they went over top of each other on this side, and I created them. So yes, you're right. I love that you're pointing that out. So yes, it's clear now.
Right. It's clear now, but he even shared, like, I think on Instagram, like a time lapse of him talking, putting the stuff up on the wall and all this other stuff. But that just goes to show you guys the whole idea of storytelling. So there's a story behind everything. There's a story behind Brian's course. Outside of his experience, he's showing you a story of how he's put in the course together. And so I really, really love that he was transparent and used video to do so. And I mean, that's just something that you all can do who are watching this live. Just really think about storytelling. We talked about Simon Sinek earlier today in regards to start with your why. I'm currently reading that book. Brian's read it 3 times. And I mean, yeah, it's just amazing. And thank you so much, Brian, for taking out the time. Now I have a new number to follow, 1,900 live streams in 2 years. So I have a lot of catching up to do. But in general, like, I really appreciate that the fact that you're genuine, you're authentic, you are the person that you are. Even though we didn't physically get to meet, I saw you from a distance. I mean, you dress the same way that you see him on camera. So he's definitely a great person to follow. I feel like he's like right there, right behind Gary Vaynerchuk for you guys to keep on the radar, because he's definitely killing it and definitely someone to follow and just to check out in regards to his content. So thank you so much, Brian, for taking out the time to do this live streaming video and podcast. A lot of people came through, and so I greatly appreciate it.
No, it was my pleasure. I talked a little bit about the different people ask me and do things the right way. Right? You were a fan of mine. You were part of my community. You shared my content. You engaged, and I really appreciate that, because I think when people are making the ask to invest the time in the other people, because I will always say yes, and I will always invest in time in those that are doing that with others. And I think, I say my mantra is connecting great people with great people to do great things. And I know that's something that you take a passion in as well. So it was my pleasure being on here, and I appreciate all the kind words.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. And everyone, thank you so much for viewing the replay, and I'll talk to you soon. I think it's ended. Hold on.